Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our iOS development using UIKit series by taking a look at the UI text field. Now, what is a UI text field? Well, as the name suggests, it is a text field. You can configure a UI text field in various ways, including having it act as a secure field, so like a password field, but we're not going to take a look at that in this video. And in one of the upcoming videos, we will take a look at that, as well as some of the various customizations that you can make to a UI text field, such as disabling auto capitalization and stuff like that. The other thing I want to talk to you today about is the responder chain, because the responder chain is a fundamental topic in UIKit, and if you're going to be working with text fields to any degree, which almost every app in existence uses a text field in some capacity, you're going to need to know what the responder chain is and how it works. So let's start with the responder chain, and then we'll actually get into the code where we're going to create and configure our UI text field. So what is the responder chain? Well, the responder chain is responsible for essentially determining what view is responsible for executing some kind of action. So this can be a tap. It could be, text being entered into a text field. It could be some kind of tap gesture. It could be some other gesture recognizer. Whatever the case might be, the responder chain is responsible for ensuring that the right view executes the right action. Another concept with the responder chain that you're going to need to know about is the first responder. Now, what does that mean? Well, the first responder is the view that is currently accepting user input of some kind, whether that be text being typed, a tap, or a some kind of gesture recognizer, Apple Pencil input, whatever the case might be. The first responder is the view that's currently taking that input. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to our code in Xcode, where we can actually create our UI text field. I have some code already done inside of our view controller, so we don't have to worry about some of the stuff. So I have a UI button and a UI label configured, because we're going to be using a UI button and UI label here as well. I have the constraints completely set up, so that includes the constraints for the text field. We're going to call this field value field, as I have it set up in the constraints code here. And then we're going to write our own method called configure text field. I have the method stub, method signature, and an empty body already ready to go. So all we need to do is go inside of that method and configure our text field. All right. So how do we create a text field then? Well, let's go ahead and go into Xcode. Okay, I need to switch my audio here.
Menu, AirDrop Bluetooth now playing. Stat 55%. Sound. Application heading. Mac Mini LS20 Yeti Stereo AirPods Pro. 18. 1 up.
Okay, there we go. That's better. In Xcode, in between our done button and our value label, we're going to say var value field equals a UI text field with an empty initializer. All right, so this is our object for our text field. Let's go ahead and go inside of our configure text field method. We'll say value field dot, we'll say border style equals dot, and then we have all kinds of border styles we can work with. Rounded rect is the usual one that you're going to see. We also have line. We have bezel. And we have none. Let's take a look at what the bezel border style does. Okay, we'll say value field dot translates auto resizing mask into constraints equals false. So we're dealing with auto layout. Then we need to say view dot add subview. And in here, we can say value field, like that. All right. While we're at it, let's also add some placeholder text to this field, so that way if you're using a screen reader, you can actually, you'll know what the field is for. So we'll just say value field dot, I believe it's placeholder text. Yep, placeholder. We'll set that equal to enter a value. All right. Let's save this now and run our code in the simulator. All right. All right, so here we are. I'm going to zoom in here on our simulator so we can kind of see a little bit better what we're dealing with. All right. So you can see here we have our text field. My voiceover cursor is currently focused on it. And then we have our button that says done. It's a bordered tinted style. All right, so this is the bezel border style. It's very subtle, but you can still see the text field. Now we can type into this field by tapping on it and just entering some stuff. All right, let's zoom out here. All right. So now, of course, right now it's editing, but we don't see the hardware keyboard. And that's because I'm using my Mac keyboard to enter stuff, and it doesn't think that it needs the hardware keyboard. So let's go ahead and actually bring up that software keyboard. It's under hardware. No. It's either under hardware or I/O. Let's try I/O. Input. Keyboard. There we go. Toggle software keyboard. And so now we have our software keyboard. We can enter some stuff with the software keyboard, and there it is. Now, as it stands at the moment, you know, we really don't have any way of dismissing the keyboard. Now, you would expect here that the done button would do that. And that's what we're going to have it do, as well as display the text that's in the text field in our label. So let's go ahead and do that. Go all the way down to the bottom of our code here. And we have display text in label. This is set as our target for our button. So inside of our method here, we are going to say value field dot. Now, to get the keyboard to go away, we need to tell the text field that it should no longer be the first responder. Because when we're editing the field, the text field is the first responder. When we're not editing inside of the field, the keyboard is told to go away. So how do we tell the text field to no longer be the first responder? Well, to do that, we need to call the resign first responder method. So resign first responder. Now, when we hit the done button, the keyboard will go away, assuming the software keyboard is on screen. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to set the text label, or the text content of our label, to what's in the field. And to do that, we can say guard let text content equals value field dot text. Now, the reason why I am using a guard let statement here is because the text on the text field is optional. It can be nil. Else return. All right. Now, after we have our text content, we can say value label dot text equals text content. All right. So what we've done here is the first thing that gets done when we tap our done button is the text field resigns its first responder status, so the keyboard gets dismissed. Then we get the text from the text field. If it's nil, we just want to return out of the method, do nothing. If it's not nil and we're able to successfully create our text content constant inside of our guard clause, we then set the text content of our label. So we set the text property to the text content constant that we got from our text field. So we can save this and run it now. All right. So let's go ahead and start editing this field. There's our keyboard. So we'll say this is some text to display in our label. Okay. Now, because I typed this in with my hardware keyboard that I have connected to my Mac, the keyboard decided to go away. Let's go ahead and summon that back. So IO, keyboard. I want the keyboard on screen so you guys can see what happens. All right, let's hit the done button. Now you see we're no longer editing the text field and the keyboard went away. And now our label has that content applied to it. So that is really the basics of a text field, how we can retrieve the text from the text field, and how we can tell the text field to stop editing and resign its first responder status, allowing us to dismiss the keyboard. Now, one thing I want you to be aware of is that depending on where your text field is on the screen, we didn't have this issue here because the text field is all the way up at the top of the screen and there's nothing else there. However, in many circumstances, you are going to experience an issue where the text field gets obscured by the keyboard, right? So the keyboard ends up covering the text field and you can't see what you're typing and it's just super annoying. Well, the process of doing that, making sure that it doesn't do that, is a bit complicated, and we're going to cover that in a later video. But for now, just be aware that that is going to happen from time to time. There are ways to fix it. But it doesn't, the text fields don't avoid being obscured by the keyboard on their own like they do in SwiftUI. And that's one nice thing that SwiftUI has that UIKit doesn't, and that is it will, text fields will avoid being obscured by the keyboard whenever possible on its own. That's, remember how in our introductory video I said SwiftUI is very opinionated and does a lot of stuff on its own. That is one of the things that it does on its own. But maybe you don't want to avoid the keyboard in the way SwiftUI does, and you want to do it some other way. In UIKit, you are able to customize how that works. Okay, so that pretty much does it for this video on the UITextField. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.